than what we saw Saturday. We're now joined by our great friend, Fox Sports' Tim Brando, joins us on 365 Sports. Tim, let's start with the Big 12 contract. It's not yet been announced, but it's pretty much all but done. And your thoughts about what you've seen or read yourself. We've had 2 or 3 analysts on the show today to kind of break it down.
My understanding is it's done. And so everything that you've read, at least from an information standpoint, from the people that follow such things, if it's in John Oran's Sports Business Journal, I mean, it's done. Okay. He's on top of that stuff as much as anybody. And I think we spoke about it. What was it? The last time I was on 2 or 3 weeks ago. And it pretty much worked out the way I thought it would. I'm a little surprised. I really don't quite get what some members of the media are deciding to write about. That's a little bit nuts from my standpoint. About they got a great deal. It's a lot more money. But it's still way behind the Big Ten and the SEC. Was anybody expecting? I mean, who was expecting the money to be like the Big Ten or like the SECs? I mean, it costs more to do business in those leagues. I don't think any of the athletic directors or presidents of the universities in the Big 12 were expecting, a deal that would rival the Big Tens or the SECs. I really don't. So why anyone wants to pour cold water on it these days, other than to troll people on social media, I guess that's the only reason to do it. Makes no sense to me. We're covering college football. You want college football to do well. This is good news for everybody. So what's the purpose of that? I don't quite understand it. I will tell you from a personal point of view and professional point of view, I'm excited because this time I don't know the specifics because I wasn't part of Fox Sports when the Big 12 deal, the one that's currently in play, was made. But my understanding was they being Fox, and this was while I was, somewhere else. I was at CBS at the time, passed on covering college basketball, just chose not to do it. That was a huge error. I mean, the Big 12 is the best college basketball conference in America. And I am dying to come to Baylor for basketball. Kansas, Bog Allen. Are you kidding me? Places like that. I mean, it's just an amazing conference for basketball, and even the new teams that are coming in. Think about it. BYU, Cincinnati are outstanding basketball programs. So I'm thrilled about it, both personally and professionally. And I don't think anything with this is surprising other than that they got more money without Texas and Oklahoma. A lot of people felt in the sports business world that, and this was going on really before Yormark became the commissioner, but during the time when Bob Bowlesby was, coming up with the extra schools, when he came up with the 3 schools out of the American and BYU, I think a lot of people were convinced that, okay, they might be able to get a good television deal, but it'll never be the kind of deal they had when they had both Oklahoma and Texas. Well, guess what? It not only is the kind of deal, it's better than the deal they had. The teams will be making, I think, on average, $7 million or more annually from this new television contract. And so, for those that were raining on the Big 12's parade and said that, they're in trouble, they may break up, they may all have to merge with another league. We'll put that in your social media peace pipe and smoke it.
Tim, what do you think that this means for expansion or anything going forward? Do you think any deal for a conference like the Big 12 is pretty much good news for the Pac-12, the AAC, and everybody else because it shows the value of live sports, or is it still to be determined?
Well, I don't know that expansion is not over. I think the potential for expansion or realignment, put it that way. When I say expansion, I think we're talking about the playoff. The potential of more realignment, Paul, is there. but it'll only happen after the TV deals are done. I think getting the TV deals are done is both good because we're going to get closer to college football playoff expansion. And I think getting the TV deal done for the Big 12 means that the Pac-12 cannot be far behind in terms of getting their own deal done. And if they don't get the deal done too soon, if they don't get it done relatively soon, then the potential of further realignment, I think, exists. Some are saying that Kliavkoff and the Pac-12 are looking to go streaming, and they could get more money from Amazon than they would from the linear networks, either the cable giant ESPN or the linear giant Fox, which are the two movers and shakers in college football. I don't think there's any question about that. That's true. They could possibly get more money. But right now, you might get money, but if your product is not exposed, I mean, if it's not being distributed, and right now streaming is not doing that well, check the numbers on Amazon for the NFL on Thursday nights. Now, the NFL cashed in, no question about that, but they are They have roughly half the audience that Fox had when they had the Thursday night NFL package, and when CBS had the Thursday night NFL package before Fox had it. So, yeah, you might get more money, but if you're out of sight, out of mind for more than 50% of those people that used to watch you, then there's a price to be paid at this stage. Now, that may change. You know, it may change. In another 5 years, as many people might be watching Prime Video as they are right now. Could be twice as many. Who knows? But for the moment, I think your best bet, if you're a conference, to both have exposure and cash, is to be with linear sports television. Okay, I think that's the wiser choice. This notion that you're going to have to pay for everything, people don't, in this day and time with the economy the way it is, no, people don't want to pay for everything that they get in sports. They want to turn on their television set and feel like if they have cable or if they don't have cable, we can still get it somehow, some way for free. And I think that matters to a lot of people. And right now, I think this deal with the Big 12 is an example of that.
Tim, it was inevitable that Brian Harsin and Auburn would go their separate ways, but now it's official. Your thoughts on the Tigers getting a new AD, moving on from Harsin, and now going to the coaching market?
You know, I would love to be a fly on the wall in John Cohen's office right now. I'd love to know how he feels. He's got assurances that he's going to be able to clean house and have total control at Auburn, because no one in my lifetime ever has in the administrative area of Auburn University. I mean, I've been covering college football for basically 5 decades, and Auburn has had great success. Yes, why? Because they have the infrastructure for it, and they've had great coaches. You know, going back to Shug Jordan and through the years with Pat Dye. But in the modern era of college football, from the moment Pat Dye left and Terry Bowden was fired, it has been one joke after another. Terry Bowden should have never been run out the way he was, but he was. And this still goes on very much the same as it always has, about every 3 years. Look, they've contributed Auburn in since Gus Malzahn cashed his $22 million check and left for Orlando. If you look at all of the assistant coaches and head coaches, okay, that they've had, that was with Gus and now with Brian, I'm told this check is $16 million that they're paying, and that's just for him, not to mention the assistants. They've contributed $50 million in the last 2.5 years to the dead money fund that the college football playoff has delivered to intercollegiate athletics. Okay, and we're talking $540 million overall since the playoff era came in play for Division I college football. I mean, my God, it's pretty incredible when you think about it. Who takes the job? If you freeze, this is just my opinion. If Hugh Freeze, who I believe really wants to get back into the SEC, doesn't take this job or isn't offered the job, and I don't believe that he will now because Cohen was the Mississippi State athletic director while Hugh was the head coach at Ole Miss. I don't see that happening. I don't think Hugh will ever coach in the SEC if he doesn't get the Auburn job. Auburn is the most mismanaged, program in the last, 5 decades of college football. I mean, it's been awful. It really has. Ever since Coach Dye left, it's just been awful. No one has had, great success without all of a sudden hitting the skids the very next year, going back to a national championship that was won when Cam Newton was there. Gene Chizik doesn't win a game in the SEC the following year, then he's thrown out in favor of Gus Malzahn, who they were trying to get rid of every year after they made him the head football coach. So, Hugh really would be the guy that would work there. I mean, he would want the job. He would be effective at the job. All he's ever done is win, but obviously he's got baggage unlike any other coach in Division I has baggage. His baggage is pretty unique, but I feel that he served his time. His reputation took as big a beating as a man and a coach's reputation could take. And, I think he would come in there right away with a culture that would allow him to win. I really believe that. But I don't think he's going to get the job because the hiring of Cohen tells me that he's off the grid. He's not going to make it. I don't know anybody else that would want that job. I heard some talk today as I was driving home from Mississippi about Matt Rule. Matt Rule's not going to take that job. Why would Matt, with his situation being what it is, he should be able to pick any job in college football he would want. And I can't imagine that Auburn, with its issues, would be a primary location for him. I just don't see that. I really don't.
Tim, you had Kansas State a couple of weeks ago. They had injured quarterbacks, and the second half was all TCU. And then I don't want to say out of nowhere, but kind of out of nowhere, they put a beat down on Oklahoma State that I don't think anybody was seeing coming. Winning, yes, but 48-0. Holy cow! What were your thoughts about that?
Well, it's pretty clear Will Howard has Wally pipped Adrian Martinez, don't you think?
It appears.
Yeah, I got blistered by some K-State fans on social media. They didn't even know who Wally Pipp was. That's not surprising. It's social media, I guess. But Howard is a guy that can beat you vertically with his arm. Martinez is a runner primarily, and I think they were throwing the ball about half as much with Adrian at quarterback. I guess that was because they wanted to protect the ball, with his stats at Nebraska being what they were. And he was a little banged up, took himself out of the game that we had at TCU. And then Howard came in. It was pretty clear during the open date, Howard had as many snaps in preparation for that game as Martinez had, if not more. And he lit up TCU for a quarter and a half. They had a 17-point lead and an 18-point lead in that game, 28-10 late in the second quarter. And then the Horned Frogs did exactly what they did against Oklahoma State. And Max Duggan led them back with some dynamic plays and an outstanding running game. Kendra Miller and Amari DiMarcato, those guys were just, they were outstanding. Kendra Miller's a great back. And I think that this is you got to give it to Sonny Dykes. I mean, he was known as an air raid guy, and he still is an air raid guy. But, he's running the football. He knows what his team's strengths are. And I think he's amended some of his Mike Leach teachings to some extent to be effective. And they're playing at a very, very high level. And if you look at what's left on that schedule, fellas, I think they got a pretty good shot of running the table. They could be just the team to screw it up for the SEC to keep two SEC teams from going into the playoff. Or, for that matter, if not them, it could screw it up for the Big Ten. If they were thinking that they could get possibly two teams with Michigan and Ohio State into the college football playoff. If they run the table, they're in, okay? Oregon has a loss. It would be much harder for them to run the table, losing the way they did at Georgia in the opener, to sneak in and steal that fourth spot. But TCU's in a great position, I think.
Tim, speaking of the SEC and then the playoff and all of that, Georgia and Tennessee both take care of their business, setting up quite the showdown this weekend in Athens. Your thoughts on just the magnitude of this game and kind of how we got here?
Well, let me give you a little preview. I'm a little late today because of my trip home. My wife and I drove back from Mississippi. I've been on a junket the last week and a half. I did the TCU game, then I drove to Little Rock to speak. Then I went to my daughter's new home in Madison, Mississippi for a couple of days and flew to Berkeley to do the Oregon game and then back to Mississippi on a red eye before I came home today. Tennessee, when my top 10 comes out, you'll see I've got them number one. I think Tennessee deserves to be the number one team in the country. That should give you, I think, a little bit of a preview of where I think the committee tomorrow night is going to put them. I think Tennessee, because of who they played, their strength of schedule to this point, the wins they have, is stronger than Ohio State. And Ohio State gave that game. Really, that game was given to them by Penn State in the late stages. I mean, Penn State was right there. I thought in a position to get it done. And mysteriously just gave the ball away. Now, granted, Ohio State impacted that to some extent. They've got a really good defense. Jim Knowles has done a great job. But I'm going to drop Ohio State 2 from 1. And I'm going to drop Georgia down to 3. So as it relates to this game, I believe Tennessee's the better team. I think Tennessee can win it. I really do. And this is one of those unbelievable turnaround stories, fellas. Similar to Steve Spurrier when he went to Florida. I don't know if you remember 1990 when the fun and gun came to the Swamp. And what he did was miraculous. He completely changed the course of the Southeastern Conference offensively. Not just the program of Florida, but the entire conference. And I think Heupel has done the same. And that was no fluke what happened with Alabama. The only difference with the Alabama situation was that their defense did not play to the level that Tennessee's defense can play to. I actually think their defense is underrated, undervalued. They don't have to be a dominant defense to win the national championship. They just have to be good enough to support the offense that's playing at the highest level of any team in college football right now. So I'm going to have them 1, and that means I believe they'll beat Georgia.
Vince Dooley, 90, passed away. I know you got to have a Vince Dooley story or two.
Oh, God. Oh, fellas. I don't know. It was a long weekend for me, okay, when that news came out. We were at Cal. We'd just come out of some meetings with Justin Wilcox and a few of his players, Jack Plummer, the quarterback and whatnot, and I had the text from Claude Felton, the longtime sports information director there. It's so close to Vince and always has been. And then I traded texts with Derek and with Barbara, his son and his wife. It was, sometimes, Smokey, you know this, you have somebody in your life that you've known a long time, he or she's lived for 90 years, and you say, well, what a wonderful life, but you're still not ready to lose them. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Not ready to lose them no matter what. And Vince was one of those guys for me. He was my first regular partner in the booth for college football games on a national level. I had left game day after the 88 season, agreed to a new deal to move home to Louisiana, with the caveat being that I would go in the booth and work CFA football, the daytime games, mid-afternoon games on on ESPN. And that was in 1989. Ron Franklin was working the primetime games. I was going to do the afternoon games, the late Ron Franklin. And they told me I'm going to be paired with Vince Dooley. And Vince's first year out of coaching. Well, we had a great relationship. I'd worked the sidelines in 85 and 86 before starting game day. And I was on hand for some of Vince's biggest wins. They beat number 2 Auburn on the Plains, and they turned on the sprinkler system in the middle of our interview. I'll never forget that. As fans from Georgia were rushing the field at Auburn, okay? Vince's history with Auburn as a quarterback, playing for Jordan way back in the day, they were forever. He and Barbara were both. They met at Auburn. Okay, Barbara's from Tuscaloosa, and Vince from Mobile, Alabama, and they met together at Auburn, and then later became the first family of Georgia in so many ways. I'll never forget this, though. As a young broadcaster, fellas, I thought, okay, Vince Dooley, his speech pattern is just like Frank Broyles. I was like, this is going to be great. We could be the next generation Frank and Keith, right? So I'm talking to him about our first game, and I got a call from Barbara right before our first game in 1989. We were going to do it on a Thursday night in Provo, Utah. BYU was playing Washington State. It was Todd Detmer's sophomore year. And Barbara called me and said, now, Tim, you're going to have to help him with pronunciations now. He has problems pronouncing his own team's name. Okay, he's got problems with that. You're going to have to help him. So I said, okay, Barbara, we're doing our rehearsal for the first open of the game. And I'm like, we're here in Provo, Utah. It's BYU and Washington State. Tim Brando with Vince Dooley. And Vince, what about tonight's game? And he says, well, Timmy, my boy, this BYU quarterback, Ty Detmer, is one of the finest field generals. I said, wait a minute. Stop. I said, Coach, you know, the moms and dads of these kids, they really want the names pronounced correctly. It's Detmer, okay? Rhymes with fur. Think incense and myrrh. Detmer. And he looked at me and he said, Timmy, that's what I said. I said Detmer. I said, let's just start this thing. And then the first play from scrimmage, all right? The first play from scrimmage, BYU's got, Lavelle Edwards is throwing the ball all over the lot. They're throwing the ball everywhere. He's got like 7 little guys out running pass patterns. They've got 2 running plays at BYU in 1989, a draw and a sprint draw. And the first play is a draw to a Samoan running back named Peter Tuipulotu. Now think about that for a second, okay? So I call the play. It's Tuipulotu. He's at the 30, the 20, the 10. He's finally run down inside the 5. It's a 65-yard run. And now we're waiting for Vince's first replay. First replay of his first telecast. And he does the coach's clinic thing, right? He's looking in front of the monitor and he says, now, Timmy, right here you're going to see a running back. You're going to see right here the running back is going to carry the ball. It's a clinic on how to run the football. He's got his tail down and his head up, and it explodes upon contact. So now I'm thinking, okay, what Vince doesn't know is, this is big time network television. We're going to have another angle of this thing. It's a 65-yard run. And so here it comes. Well, here it is again, Timmy, from field level. He says, now he's coming right into your living room. Timmy, here he is. There's Peter. So we laughed, we got through it, and we closed out the season with the Holiday Bowl, and it was BYU again. And Detmer set what was a single game passing record that night. I think he threw for 453 yards, which was the most ever in a college football Division I game at that time. And it was crazy. And Gary Brown, the late Wisconsin running backs coach who played at Penn State, was a running back in his junior and senior years, but he was a safety. He came on a blitz, a safety blitz, and he whiffed on Detmer, and then came from behind Detmer and stole the ball out of his hands as he was about to pass, and then took off the other way to win the game 50-39. BYU was on their way to a game-clinching touchdown, and what was, I think, almost a 5-hour football game. That's I thought we would be doing it all over again the next year, and then Vince got the job as AD, and he had another year on his deal, and he chose to get out after one season in the booth with me. But it was just, we became such great friends, and we maintained contact with one another. And all those years that I was doing SEC games, when I came into Athens, I'd stay at his home. He had a pool house in the back, and that was better than the Holiday Inn in Athens. So I would stay with him. And then my daughter was dating her fiance, soon-to-be husband, who now lives in Mississippi. She came to watch Ole Miss play Georgia 10 years ago, and she and her husband-to-be stayed in their home. They stayed through the weekend after I left and watched more football on a Sunday. They were just very close friends. He came to my daughter's weddings. Barbara and Vince were in our home when Georgia played in the Independence Bowl one year. Just a wonderful, wonderful man, and someone that was very helpful to me in terms of understanding, the other side of the business. That Tim, you can speak bluntly about what you really believe. No one has a problem with your opinions as long as they're well-founded opinions. Just consider people's feelings when you give them. That's all, and that's a good thing. He was a guiding light in a lot of ways in my life and everyone else's life that he touched. He's on my Mount Rushmore for college football coaches in the SEC. I think you've got to put him there. I think you put Nealon there, Bear Bryant, Steve Spurrier. He's in that group. He's certainly top 5 all time in the history of the Southeastern Conference, and he's top 10 all time in college football as a whole. 201 wins, 6 SEC titles, a national championship. Could have had a second very easily. They got beat on that Penn State game could have gone their way, and they lost the opportunity with Pitt one year when Marino had an unbelievable game to barely beat Georgia. So 3 straight years in 80, 81, and 82, you were hard-pressed to find a better team than that one.
Tim, as always, a great reminiscing about many things. Glad I brought up Vince and also the time you spent with him. And he was the ultimate gentleman, it seemed like, in college football. Yep.
A great Southern statesman. He really, really was. And he will be a guy that all of us miss. And regardless of this having a full life, we wish that he could have lived forever.
Thank you, Tim. Appreciate the emotions as well. Tim Brando, Fox Sports, with us, and has become part of our go-to, and his opinions and his history, and we appreciate him so much, and especially a little bit on I didn't know some of that about Vince Dooley. Just know he was a great football coach and a great gentleman.
I remember